Freedom Fighters is a title, guys, that I played it feels like so long ago. This title came out, guys, and I was a little bit skeptical about it when it first released, and I thought to myself, I'm going to give this game a try, and let's see what it's all about, and really, guys, this was a title that, from a reception perspective to a following, really, that was built from this title, it started to build momentum, and a lot of people were wanting to see, are we going to get a Freedom Fighters 2? And so what I want to talk about in this segment of the show, guys, as more information and as more rumbling speculation has come out, I want to talk about Freedom Fighters 2 and everything that we know about this title at this point in time. So let's get into it. So, guys, coming to us from the official Freedom Fighters Wikipedia page, on April 6, 2004, Eidos UK revealed plans for the sequel of none other than Freedom Fighters. Eidos announced it would distribute the sequel in the latter part of 2005. However, IO Interactive announced development of a new game, Kane and Lynch Deadman, casting the future of a Freedom Fighter sequel in doubt. In 2010, when asked about a potential sequel, Kane and Lynch 2 Dog Days director Karsten Lund refused to comment. In 2011, IO Interactive's official Twitter account tweeted that Freedom Fighters 2 is definitely something a lot of us are interested in doing. In 2017, IO Interactive split from Square Enix and took with them the rights to Freedom Fighter since it was published before the Eidos buyout. So, first of all, guys, that tells us, that we haven't really had a lot of updates as of more recently. The last thing that we saw was really back, if we go back all the way to 2017, and we're in 2022 now. So where does that lead us? Well, first of all, guys, I think a big thing that we have to mention here is what the critical reception, or I should say the reception was of the title, because according to Metacritic, guys, it got an 81 out of 100 on PS2, this being the original Freedom Fighters. On Xbox, it got 82 out of 100, and on PC, an 80 out of 100. That's pretty good. When we look at IGN and their review of it, they gave it an 8.4 out of 10. That's pretty great. GameSpot, a 9.3 out of 10. That's pretty great. So overall, guys, when we look at just the overall trajectory of the reception of this title, I think that, it definitely was moving in a positive direction. In an article, guys, coming to us from Rob Dolan of Game Rant, finally being re-released after years of silence, the return of Freedom Fighters could be a huge deal for fans in IO Interactive's cult classic. Back before Homefront and Homefront Revolution, there was another alternate history-themed video game that flew under the radar, developed by the same team that was responsible for Hitman's rise to fame. IO Interactive also developed a third-person shooter known as Freedom Fighters. While it was generally well received at the time, the game ended up becoming a cult classic among all the fans who originally played the game. Now, in its most recent re-release, Freedom Fighters has a chance to show why it was so beloved back in 2003. So back when development began on Freedom Fighters, it was a very different game. Initially, the game was unveiled as Freedom, the Battle for Liberty Island, and was meant to have hybrid action combat split between a turn-based strategic mode and a third-person shooter mode. Presumably, because of Hitman and Hitman 2's massive popularity, at some point that turn-based mode was implemented directly into the shooter gameplay instead with the Game Squad system. This system was one of the many ways that Freedom Fighters was incredibly unique at the time. So, in a lot of ways, Freedom Fighters ended up being very indirectly formative for sandbox and open world games. Freedom Fighters did some interesting things with the game's systemic world, as each region of New York was divided into certain districts that involved a lot of purposeful backtracking. There would be anywhere between 2 to 4 zones in a region, but each contained a pivotal part of the Russian army strength. Various regions would be guarded by different forms of the Russian military strength, like helicopters that patrolled and guarded major strongholds, or troop convoys that would respawn enemies in cleared areas. So, look, guys, I really think that this was a title in a number of ways that had some really interesting concepts and definitely it should be coexisting still in the gaming landscape as a long-withstanding franchise, guys. They really did and had some really cool concepts. And I even feel even Homefront and such, guys, even though those games didn't have as good of a reception as Freedom Fighters, I still thought that was a title that should be something that was continued in some form or another. I think Freedom Fighters is a perfect opportunity to do a soft reboot or even do like some remakes and such in the future. So Freedom Fighters also employed a ton of other smaller world building elements that made the adventure much more immersive. After every mission, players returned to the game's hub world in the New York sewer system. With each liberated region of New York, the rebel base in the sewers grew bigger as more tents and supplies were erected in the base. While the base building was never as systemic and widespread as something like Metal Gear Solid 5's expansive systems, it still accomplished the same level of immersion, both visually and functionally. This progression emphasized the player's revolution was growing stronger. So for most fans jumping back into the re-release, many are hoping the success of this launch on PC could lead to a reinvigoration of the franchise. Even though Hitman's reboot has done remarkably well for IO Interactive, fans of Freedom Fighters have been asking about the status of the franchise for years and whether a remake, remaster, or sequel was coming. IO's always been vocally proud of the Freedom Fighters series, even though a planned sequel in 2005 was eventually canceled. Many are hoping the success of this re-release could potentially spur on a sequel in the series 17 years after the original game's release date. So obviously, guys, Freedom Fighters now is available on PC, which is absolutely huge to say the least. Now, where does this leave us moving forward with Freedom Fighters 2? I do believe, guys, this is a massive step in the right direction. That being, them releasing it on PC is huge. And obviously, guys, the sequel was canceled in 2005, and we've got all these years later, but this is really where it comes down to you guys. You guys who are like this series, like this franchise, us voicing our opinion to the developers, saying, to IO Interactive, hey, we want this game made. Our voice, guys, can actually really greenlight a sequel to Freedom Fighters. And I think that our actions as well, downloading, purchasing, whatever it may be, Freedom Fighters on PC is huge, guys, because that's going to show the developers that, hey, there is still a big following here for Freedom Fighters moving forward, and we want to go ahead and we're going to greenlight a sequel. Even though Hitman is awesome, guys, and they've done an incredible job with that franchise, Freedom Fighters could be something really special that they continue to move forward in the future. But let me know, guys, where do you think we are with Freedom Fighters 2 at this point in time? We know very little at this point, but what we do know is that Freedom Fighters being released on PC, and obviously this can build momentum moving forward for the franchise as a whole, guys. It could be something absolutely huge. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. And for more Freedom Fighters 2 content and videos, stay here with Zero TV.